Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome in. We're going to give it a few minutes for people to join. As you're entering, you can let us know in the chat. We'll do a little icebreaker. Let us know your name and your school affiliation if you have one. And I'm going to leave these instructions. We have a Spanish interpreter with us today, so we'll give it a few minutes, and I'll leave these instructions up. And Giovanna, if you need me to like move forward on a slide or back, let me know. So yeah, just go ahead and put your name and school affiliation if you have one in the chat. You good, Giovanna, or do you need me to advance at all?
Okay. I'm going to talk in Spanish real quick if anyone has joined in Spanish, but vamos a tener interpretación para esta reunión y para acceder la interpretación a través de su computadora, puedes poner aquí closed caption o interpretación y seleccionar español, no Spanish. Y también, si vas al next slide, Jerry. También puedes hacerlo en tu teléfono con estos 3 puntos de clic a estos y poner More y puedes poner tu interpretación a español también. Y tenemos Gabriel ayudándonos hoy día. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Jerry DeAnda. I am a community organizer here at San Francisco Parent Coalition, and we are so excited today to be having this conversation to talk about literacy in SFUSD and to be speaking with Deputy Superintendent Dr. Karling Aguilera-Fort and Devin Krugman. So I will go ahead and we can get started. Again, if you're just joining us, please put your name and school affiliation in the chat. And again, we do have Spanish interpretation if you need that. If you're having any trouble at all during this call, let Giovanna or Nicole know. Nicole is also our managing director here at the organization, and she'll be helping field some if you're having any troubleshooting issues, technical issues, she can help with that as we move along. So thank you again for being here today. Here's our agenda for today. So we're going to go over our community norms and who we are as an organization. We're going to talk a lot about our Kids Can't Wait campaign, what the work that we've done to date, the wins that we've had, where we still need to move forward as a district to continue to improve on the outcomes of our children in SFUSD. And then we're going to talk and we're going to have a focus, like we have some questions that we've fielded from our community to feed our discussion today on, SFUSD and the, related to budget and our student outcomes, how those things are intertwined and how they may be affected. And then we'll end it with some upcoming events and other places you can get plugged in. So again, thanks for being here. So our organization is all about centering the voices and needs and aspirations of our students and families. As we meet together, we want to make sure that we're staying curious about different perspectives, and we want to make sure that we listen and lift up what we're hearing from parents and allow other people to process information and think and sit with it before sharing opinions as well. And again, our mission here at San Francisco Parent Coalition is that we are centering the needs of children and youth in San Francisco public schools. And we bring together a diverse network of parents from all across the district and also caregivers to advocate for a thriving, equitable school system. There's been a lot going on in the district and it's been fast moving over the last year, especially. So we want to make sure that we can continue to lift up voices of our community and make sure that we are also keeping you informed as well. Okay, so again, we are a nonprofit that started in 2020. Again, another strong community of SFUSD families. We are always advocating for excellence and equity, and we want to make sure that everything we do is kid-centered and kid-focused, and we want to keep achieving these wins for kids. We've had, again, through our Kids Can't Wait campaign, which I am working intimately with. We are reviving it this year. So again, we've had a lot of wins, like replacing the outdated SFUSD literacy program, and the math audit timeline being cut in half to assess where we're at in the district. Like, this is all about the work that we do, is like bringing parents together to advocate for these things, to make the change that we want to see to improve the lives of our kids. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But we also have a couple of other active campaigns as well that we have in tandem. So we do a lot of budget work through our Fix the Budget, Fund the Future campaign. And that campaign is really all about making sure that we have, our budget is solvent, that we regain local control from the state, the partial state takeover. And again, tying dollars to student learning outcomes and keeping that money as close to our kids for their benefit as possible. And then also making sure that we get greater transparency and accessibility of information that's coming from the district that helps inform us in our decisions and our advocacy. And then again, our Kids Can't Wait campaign that is all about improving outcomes in literacy and math, and investing in supporting our teachers and high quality instruction in the classrooms, and making sure that the teachers have exactly what they need to be able to work with our kids and bring out the best in them. And then we also really super excited, and I'm really super excited that we're joined by some of the parents who went through our first Read to Lead workshops, which talks about some really simple things that we can do in the home as parents to engage with our kids that really have a huge impact on their literacy. And we did that at Guadalupe Elementary School just last month. And yeah, again, I'm so grateful to have our Guadalupe families here today in attendance. And then our I Love My Public School campaign is about spreading the love of our schools, right? We want to see SFUSD thrive. We want to see every school in this district thrive. And we want to help get more kids in our public schools and keep more families in our public schools. So again, the issue all around Kids Can't Wait is like, how do we improve math and literacy outcomes at SFUSD? So we're kind of always taking a look at where we're at currently, how we need to move forward to make things better, and what the data, like what it looks like right now and where we need to go. And so I'm going to kick it over to Meredith Dotson, who is our executive director, and she is going to go into some more of the details of the data and where we're at right now and where we're going to go.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Hi, everyone. Meredith Dodson, Executive Director with SF Parent Coalition. And I'm really just chiming in here because I've been involved with the org since we started this literacy campaign and before. And Jerry has been taking over that work over the last few months, but I have a little bit more of the historical context. And so when we started in 2020, then just as a few parents who were concerned about what was going on with the pandemic and how kids would be impacted and their education would be impacted during the pandemic. We, first started out focused on that issue, focused on getting our schools open in accordance with public health guidelines. Once those came out that our schools could. And then after that, we had this momentum and groundswell of parent energy, and we were like, what else is going on that we can fix, right? And we looked at the data in literacy and math, and we were really concerned. And some of this data we have here, but also we encourage you, because we want to get to that conversation with SFUSD in a moment. If you really want to dig in with us, like, this is what this campaign works on. And so reach out to Jerry at sfparents.org and please join us in getting involved, because it impacts all of our kids. And we want to see the district do better. We want to see the district make sure every kid can read at grade level, and including those who have been underserved by the district for far too long. As we see here, we have one of the worst gaps in the state in terms of our achievement gap, equity gap, especially for our low-income Latino families, low-income Black families, and both in math and literacy. So if you guys go to the next slide, again, this is like, this is a lot of data on one slide here. And so we encourage you to get involved, and we can talk through this data with you. But these are are showing some of those gaps. So if you look really closely, you can see that this is broken out by student subgroup, and it's all over the map. And kids who look like mine are, up in the 70s in terms of their percentage of, reading grade level milestones in math and reading. And then, you go across all of the different subgroups, and it shouldn't look like this, right? It shouldn't be all over the map like this. All kids deserve to learn how to read and do math at grade level. And so the district is working hard on this, and we're excited to talk with them more about what they've been working on. But this is really where our campaign focused. You can go to the next slide. Over the last several years. So we started really diving in 2021, 2022. We launched a Literacy for All campaign, initially just focused on literacy, but then we were looking at math and we were like, wow, math, really, we got to work on that too. So we combined that into our SF Kids Can't Wait campaign, focused on both early literacy and early math, and push the district to make changes to the curriculum and instructional support for teachers to make sure that we can really work towards improving those goals for our kids. And they did that. And so we had this big win in 2023 when the district announced that they were adopting a new literacy curriculum, and that started in our schools this year. So all of your kids' classrooms, all of your kids' teachers have those new materials as of last August. Many or most of them got trained last summer in the new curriculum, and again, that's with literacy, and that's much thanks to the parents who were on the ground out there fighting for these changes and these improvements, to a new, newer evidence-based program that shows results for kids. And we did the same thing for math, and we've made a lot of progress with math as well. And there's going to be a big announcement, I think, and a vote. Hopefully the Board of Education does the right thing and passes the policy around the early math curriculum next Tuesday. So that's going to be another win, assuming that the Board of Education passes that. So that's just like a really, really quick overview. Again, we encourage you to get involved in this campaign with us because the work is not over yet. And we're going to hear more about that today. So you can go to the next slide. So these were some of our asks last, I can't remember when we put these out, but we updated this, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now, and we gave an update last year in terms of where the district was at last spring. And we're getting ready to do another update. And so again, part of this conversation today is getting information from the district so we can update where are we on these, and hopefully some of those red areas of like help or we don't know yet, remains to be seen. Hopefully we'll start to see more green and check marks there. Again, we need you with us, making sure we get the district to move in that direction. And there may be some additional asks now that some of these others have closed out. Additional demands that we have on the district around early literacy and early math instruction. Okay. Okay, that was my really quick overview. I'm sorry for talking fast. I hope that the translation was okay and with my fast talking. And I'm going to pass it back over to Jerry to lead this conversation with the SFUSD Deputy Superintendent of Education Services, Dr. Karling Aguilera-Fort, who we've been working with and connecting with over the last couple of years about this work, as well as the Executive Director of Content Teams, Devin Krugman, again, who we've been working with very closely, and we're grateful to have this collaborative partnership because it takes all of us rowing in the same direction to make these changes that we know our kids across San Francisco deserve. So we've been sourcing questions from our campaign team, from our parent campaign team, and Jerry's going to lead us through some of those questions. And thank you so much, SFUSD, for being here and working with us on these important changes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Meredith. And thank you, Devin. And I feel like Devin, I owe you an apology. I can't remember if did I say your name right in the beginning? I feel like, wait, I messed that up. So I'm going to own it right now. We can start off with a laugh. And I apologize. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Dr. Aguilera-Fort. So yeah, like Meredith said, we have these questions that are sourced from the community, and we won't share screen so we can just kind of talk and have a conversation. But But yeah, so Devin, I guess we can start just maybe what has your what's been your team's involvement in the budgeting process this fall, spring so far? I mean, there's been a lot, again, we're all acknowledging that there's been a lot going on, especially around budget. And so can you give us like a little bit of an insight, or you or Dr. Aguilera-Fort can give us like some insight in what you guys have been involved in terms of that process?
Yeah, I can definitely speak for myself and my team, and I think Dr. Aguilera-Fort is a little bit delayed, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. But just for context, since I don't know everybody who's on the call, I can introduce myself, but Miguel is here as well. And my name is Devin Krugman. I'm the Executive Director of Content Teams, so I work in curriculum and instruction, and I work across our K-12 core curriculum teams that also run professional development. So I often describe it, especially to families, as the subject areas your student is normally in during the school day. So multilingual pathways, ELA, history, social studies, libraries, computer science, math, science, arts, and PE. So within the context of those teams, I can speak sort of to my specific piece of the budget process, which is a little bit different than the overarching district strategic. As I'm sure folks are aware, within those teams, we hold a fair bit of the work associated with goals 1 and 2, so 3rd grade literacy, 8th grade math, and then in particular Guardrail 3, which is around curriculum and instruction. And so within the context of budget conversations, there's some really tangible pieces, which is often like, what do we need for materials? Our teams centrally provide all of the instructional materials to school sites. We also centrally provide professional learning, which means the budget of our teams pays the extended hours for teachers to attend, or we pay sub coverage. So often our involvement is around the strategic plans for instructional shifts and curriculum implementation, and then identifying the associated financial needs.
And has that been impacted? Like, do you feel like that's been impacted at all, or how was it different this year from years past?
Yeah, so just for some historical context, I joined the district in November 2019, so about 4 months before distance learning. I think every year that I've been with the district has had some financial right sizing to do. So within curriculum and instruction, we have been responsive every year to that right sizing, with some reorganization of our teams, some decrease of team size, some shifts around resource allocation. One of the things I feel really grateful for within the district is just the prioritization around instructional needs and curriculum in particular. Tuesday is a big night for us. We're really hopeful for the approval of our recommendation for new K-8 math curriculum. The budget for that has already been loaded. So should it be approved, we can cut that purchase order and move to delivery. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think I really appreciate how much the district has prioritized instructional needs in this shift around fiscal resources.
And how do you see that, like, in terms of where you're looking at priorities of like internally, do you prioritize materials? Are you prioritizing professional development? And do you see any do you have any concerns about where we might need to maybe possibly advocate for more resources to go to one area versus another?
Yeah, so one of the things I often emphasize about our budgets in particular, which I think is maybe not as much of a known fact, the vast majority of our curriculum and instruction budgets actually go to sites. And so that happens in a number of different ways. So one, our budgets hold, for example, itinerant staffing positions. So all the arts teachers in the district are in our curriculum and instruction budget, even though they work at school sites. All of the curriculum purchasing is in our budget, even though it lands at school sites. And so, I do think what we've tried to hold is, you know, what do we think we need in order to both purchase materials, train not just teachers, but also coaches and administrators in the instructional shifts and the use of those materials. And then I would say from that point, we then look at like, what do we have to scale back in order to do that? And so what I would say is, you know, we have very small central teams at this point. Our math team is a part of one person who also has science and computer science. You know, so I do think what we have seen is we've really tried to focus the resource allocation on the supports and materials that go to sites, and kind of we're at, I would say, the bare bones associated with central staff to just manage the operations and systems.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think the reason I want to talk about that a little bit more is because one of our first campaign asks was around high dosage tutoring for students that are not meeting grade level milestones in math or literacy. And so I guess maybe can you, and I see Dr. Aguilera-Fort joined us. Welcome. Thank you for being here. When a student is testing and there's a problem identified or there's a gap, right? And they're saying, okay, we're not meeting this student is not yet meeting their grade level milestones. What is the intervention at that point? Like, what's the standard procedure to make sure that those kids get up to grade level if they're not meeting the milestones? And is that at risk because of the budget?
I can go ahead and answer that, but I wanted to pause for a second just in case Dr. Aguilera-Fort wanted to say hello or add anything.
Go ahead. My apologies. Just running from one place to the other. So go ahead, Miss.
Yeah. So the district, in alignment with state guidance, employs a multi-tiered system of support, which we call MTSS. And there's like a million acronyms in education. But if a student is not making adequate progress in what we call our tier 1, which is like the daily curriculum and instruction that every student gets, what is supposed to happen is they should then be referred for a tier 2 intervention. And that tier 2 intervention would be some additional support in the area of need. So I think one example I'll just start with is with language and literacy. So if we see a student who's not making adequate progress in reading growth, whether it be in like foundational skills and decoding or in reading comprehension, they would be referred to a tier 2 intervention, which means additional support in, let's say, decoding. And that can work in 2 different structures within the district. In the language and literacy block that teachers are supposed to have, there's a designated time called small group instruction. And during that designated small group instruction, kids who are referred to tier 2 would work with one of 2 people. Either it would be a small group with their classroom teacher, or with an interventionist. The district term for that is an RTIF. Again, a lot of acronyms and terms. But they would get additional intervention in decoding. The program that the district uses for tier 2 is called SIPS. It's a structured literacy intervention program. And that student would work with either that classroom teacher or that interventionist in a designated cadence for a series of weeks with progress monitoring. So they would get some additional small group time with SIPS materials where they would be working on a specific skill like decoding, and whether it be that RTIF or that classroom teacher would be progress monitoring their growth over time. And the way that it is supposed to work is if the student, let's say, catches back up and makes that progress, they might exit tier 2 and just go into the tier 1. If they're not making that adequate progress, they might go into tier 3 or potentially, depending on the need and evaluation, be referred for additional services. And that would be based on progress monitoring and data collection over time.
And is that the same at every school? Like, is that process the same for regardless of what school they're at? Are the resources allocated at site level based on need? Like, how do you determine where to place those resources and how to prioritize those interventions if you have to across the district?
So one of the things I'll just differentiate a little bit is the difference between curriculum and instruction and our schools division, which leads supervises. And so from curriculum and instruction, what we would do is we provide the SIPS materials, we provide the guidance on like the dosage and the cadence and the progress monitoring associated with tier 2. We would provide the professional development for those folks delivering intervention, like the RTIFs, for example. However, within the schools division, they might work with schools in terms of how those schools set up their tier 2 model. And schools have some level of difference in how they set up that tier 2 model, depending on their staffing structure, depending on their student need. So for anybody who might be in the weeds on the board report, it's for Tuesday night. We describe one of those tier 2 structures at a school site. In their case, actually based on their student need, they've slightly shifted and they have all teachers at the same designated small group time, and they've employed some additional staff to deliver tier 2, their instructional coach. They have some other like paraeducators and other staff who help support with that. So again, responsive to their student need and in consultation with their lead team, they have slightly amended their tier 2 structure. So there is some difference that you would see at school site based on their staffing and things like that.
And is that at all, like, does that change? I mean, I'm assuming there would be impact for the budget. Do you know, like, are you able to tell like what that impact might be or the breadth of that, or, like, do you have any insight into that from your division and how those interventions could look different in the next year?
And I'll just chime in because a lot of people are putting in the comments that they're losing their RTIFs. And so there's a lot of concern about, and for folks who don't know the RTIF acronym, reading interventionist, I think you said that already, Devin. But so, yeah, like, I think the big question is, how are we going to do, like, how are we going to meet those intervention needs with these budget changes? And are you worried? And should we be worried? And what can we do?
I will speak to the actual budget side of the house and the allocation of resources, and then Ms. Krugman can go back to the way in which we are supporting and planning to support teachers. And indeed, it is true. Many of the outside classroom support are going right now. Any allocation of additional classroom support or school support that is not in the classroom, meaning external teachers, will not be allocated yet until at least 92% per school of the staffing is clear and per cohort, meaning we need to have, based on a goal that the board and HR has established, we need to have 92% of our classroom teachers teaching in the classrooms. Then schools will be able to hire this additional staff. One argument has been made about what about if these people do not want to teach in the classroom and they really want to teach this specific set of intervention or additional supports. Unfortunately, right now, the goal is to have across the board, so all of the students across the district will have the same experience of having a qualified classroom teacher. And right now, that's not the reality. So yes, I'm not going to deny that it is true. Many schools will begin the school year without these additional supports that you have had as of right now. RTIF, additional ELD support. Those are intervention teachers that as of right now, schools have been able to hire. But because of the goal is to have across the district 92% of the classrooms with a qualified classroom teacher, we will not be able to do that at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you for that, Dr. Aguilera-Fort. I just wanted to also ask, because I think when I'm out there, and I'm actually fairly new to getting into some of these weeds that Devin was talking about earlier, that 92% goal, what I'm trying to understand is, like, is there a plan to reach that goal? How like, does the district have a plan to get to that 92% where we can then look at hiring back some of these positions, and how do we get there?
Thank you for that question. I can tell you that our partners in HR have been actively recruiting these teachers. And even yesterday, it wasn't exactly for classroom teachers, but in this case, they began with paraprofessionals. the district, in collaboration with the special education department, they had an event in which they were inviting across the board from universities, colleges, even people who work for non-public agencies. We had a fair so that people could apply for jobs in the district, and it was successful. The same will apply for teachers. So there is an intentional effort from our HR team to go and recruit and partner with universities so that we can get, hopefully, the 92% that we are hoping to reach.
Great, thank you. And I know that there's been like, we're launching Frontline, and I know that some like principals are starting to use that now for a budget process. And how is that? I guess there was a lot of challenge, I think, over the last year or more in getting teachers hired, so that, you know, there was just, it seemed like there might have been a little bit of a bottleneck getting teachers through. Are you like, what's your hope for having Frontline on board? And do you even have any insight into like how that looks? Like, if we've got the people, they're interested, they're being interviewed, how do we onboard them well?
Here is what I can tell you from what I have learned. Indeed, the system is a little bit complex. It's not something that we can organically just go and do it and it will work. The people are being trained right now, from site leaders to support staff are being trained into the system. Based on the theory of action that has been presented to us, as soon as the system is up and running, it will be much easier to input the information from the staff that we are trying to hire, and that will filter into the system and into the schools that are hiring for. That's the goal. Is happening right now? No, because we haven't even begun to input that information into the system yet. So they, for the last month, people are being trained. And this week, as we speak right now, there are people in charge of supporting site leaders. And we requested through the superintendent to have a more personalized approach for site leaders and staff at the sites, so they can navigate the system at a faster pace. So based on what I know today, within the next 2 weeks, it looks like the system will become more user-friendly because people will know how to use it. That's as much as I can share with you right now.
Okay.
Hope is the hopes that have been shared with that is that as soon as the system is up and running, people will not have to go through all these different worksheets and Google Sheets and all this stuff that people are using right now to get the staffing that they need.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And then, okay, I appreciate that insight, even if it might have been a little bit out of your purview, but I'll kind of bring it back then to a little bit more of our literacy focus. In terms of like the teacher supports, one of the things that we were seeking was to make sure that teachers had everything that they needed and were compensated for their time in training on the new curriculum. And so some things that we were hearing from teachers is that they needed more, they were looking for a little bit more from the district, and it was just taking a lot of time for them to plan out new lessons. And so I'm just wondering, like, what has the district shifted since the early launch of the new ELA curriculum? And what could it do differently thinking ahead to the new math curriculum that's going to be rolling out this next school year, just to make sure that, again, to your point of like making things work smoothly, that all of our teachers have what they need to make sure that they're, you know, efficiently implementing and able to, you know, teach the kids in the class.
Ms. Krugman will talk about lessons learned from the implementation of the language art curriculum. Now, I will give thanks to Ms. Meredith Dodson, because she was the one who emailed me and asked me about Prop 28, I believe that was one of those city-approved measures that allows teachers to actually reclaim professional development hours as they are investing their time in developing these lessons. Because of that, I immediately follow up with the teams and with the schools and with the principals, and now they do have that. In terms of our case, a lesson learned is we need to inform from the very beginning, actually, now at the end of the school year so that principals and teachers can plan to use those resources that exist, and they can pace in and pace out their time in which they will be investing. This is in addition to the professional development sessions that are being planned. So that actually helped a lot because many teachers are taking advantage of it. Here is one caveat. The teacher has to decide that this is the way in which they want to invest their time. This is the kind of learning. An advantage for us is that now the district must approve instead of taking a course on, I'm making this up completely. I haven't seen this, but I am going to do a complete, an example that is out there, cooking coconut rice, because that will help with the well-being of the teacher. So we are trying now, our intent is to ask, how will that impact student learning, and what is the connection between that and the goals that we have set? So there is a new system in terms of asking questions about that professional learning that the teachers are asking for. But thank you, because it helped a new group of teachers to know that they have these resources. That's from our end a lesson learned. But Ms. Krugman has lesson learned as a system through the implementation of the literacy curriculum.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that I'll just say is we try to be really careful around saying literacy curriculum or language and literacy curriculum, because the adoption included Spanish language arts, English language arts, designated ELD, integrated ELD. In those language arts blocks, we also have reading and writing. And so one of the reasons, aside from just honoring the work of our language pathways, I want to say that is that is a really complex adoption. and represents for many educators, especially at the elementary level, like close to half of their instructional day. And so the complexities that we see with a language and literacy adoption, I will say anecdotally, exceed that of math. We're talking about, roughly like a 2 hour to 2 hour and 30-minute block of time versus, let's say an hour block of time that teachers are planning for. And so, in addition to the additional planning time, which Prop G, thank you so much for naming Dr. Aguilera-Fort and Meredith for surfacing, has been, a really strong support structure. We also held a Literacy Institute in January, which had a series of supported instructional planning time for teachers to engage in. Thank you to Miguel for the planning and design of that. So we've tried to be responsive to that planning need over time. What I would say is we have gathered really great data that's informing our math implementation plan. And so some of the really key shifts that I'll say is I think we see the strongest implementation at sites where there are very strong instructional leadership teams. So not necessarily always holding everything centrally, but thinking more about what can we do to differentiate our site support to strengthen the instructional leadership at sites. And that includes ILT support, that's the instructional leadership team. It includes expansive training for our instructional coaches, expanded training for our school administrators. And so those are some of, I would say, the professional learning shifts that we're working towards in the math process, is expanding the instructional support for those groups. I would say for language and literacy, those groups were definitely included, and I think we had a very high emphasis on teachers. And so we're boosting our administrator supports in particular. And I would say also front loading the instructional coach support. They're going to get their first training ahead of all other groups in May. So that's one particular piece. The other piece that I would say, which again, not to go too much in the weeds, this is where I live, but isn't as exciting to everybody else, is within the math pilot, we actually had a really large pilot group, far larger than any other pilot we had had. We had over 150 elementary teachers. They were deeply generous with their time and feedback, and so provided us with some feedback on what we could do differently, because as those pilot teachers in math, they were piloting the two different math curricula at the same time they were in year one of HMH implementation. And so they did give us feedback, which one, I will say the exciting news for us is every single one of them said they were excited for new math curriculum. We only had 3 people drop, and it was all before the beginning of the school year. So that's like a very high retention for teachers who are taking on new programs. And they provided us some like strategic operational support that would just make their lives easier. And I think a lot of times in that feedback around where teachers feel overwhelmed with planning, a lot of it has to do with, you know, the daily ins and outs of like prepping lessons, right? So we've tried to be really strategic in how we can purchase materials differently so that things like center kits are pre-prepped so that teachers aren't spending, as I used to do, you know, like 8 to 9 o'clock at night, like cutting out different cards for kids and things like that. So we've tried to be strategic about that. All the materials, assuming the recommendations are approved on Tuesday, the materials will be delivered to school sites before the end of the school year so that teachers have access to their guides over the summer for any planning in addition to the PD that we offer. So we've, again, tried to think really differently around the PD supports for implementation and some of the materials purchasing as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think those are really, there's some really great like bright spots right there. And so like I'll clarify because like again, I'm not in the weeds. So correct me, keep me honest, Devin. HMH is the curriculum that the English language arts curriculum that was newly implemented, correct? Adopted? Is that right?
Yes.
HMH. Okay, so they were doing, and then the math, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And so I would love to know like how, since you mentioned the 8th grade math pilot, there were 3 different, from what I'm remembering, because my son was an 8th grader last year, there were 3 different ways that that was going to be implemented. The pilot was going to be implemented at school. Is that correct? Or was it 2 different ways? There was like they can test into it, or they can have it as an elective, or they just get it.
And you mean the algebra
The
1?
8th grade algebra. Yes, thank you. The 8th grade algebra. How is that going? Like, how has that been going? So you've got a lot of great feedback from that, which is awesome. You've retained teachers, even though they were doing this pilot and putting in a new English language arts curriculum. How is the 8th grade math pilot been going? And how does that, like, what will that adoption look like fully next year?
Yeah, I do just want to make one point of difference. So the piloting that I was just describing was the math curriculum piloting, and that's been occurring K-8. So at the elementary level, they were piloting 2 programs, iReady and Imagine Learning. And in middle school, they were piloting Amplified Desmos Math. So that's for core curriculum.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We do a lot of piloting, so it's, you know.
And I'm not, literally, obviously not in the weeds. So yeah.
No, it's fine.
Thank you. I appreciate you keeping me honest.
And then separate from that, we have also been piloting a series of Algebra 1 models in 8th grade. And so that has happened at the same time as the curriculum piloting, which is partially why it gets, you know, interwoven. So the models we've been piloting for Algebra 1 in 8th grade are as follows. So they're at a series of different school sites. So we have 2 schools where students in 8th grade skipped Math 8 and are taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. We have a series of schools where students in 8th grade have the option of taking Algebra 1 as one of their electives. So they're enrolled in both Math 8 and Algebra 1 at the same time. We have 1 or 2 schools where students in 8th grade can opt into a compression course that is a mix of Math 8 and Algebra 1. And then we also have at the district level made available online Algebra 1, which is independent and self-directed for students to complete outside of school hours. And then we are also offering a compressed summer algebra course for students to take in between 8th and 9th grade, very similar to the summer geometry course that has been made available by the district for many years. And so those programs launched in this past August, and it is meant to be a 2-year pilot of Algebra 1 models. So the 24-25 school year, and then the 26-27, the 25-26 school year. So while those pilots are running, we actually also have a research agreement with a team at Stanford who are studying the student outcomes across all of those various models. So they are looking at things like student course pass rates. Kids who are currently in 8th grade, they're going to follow them into 9th grade. So their fall 9th grade fall semester scores, their SBAC data, any testing data. They're also going to be engaging in surveys and focus groups with students and educators and caregivers. And the goal of that research is to provide us with a picture of student success and experience across the various models to help us make a final recommendation to the board in spring 2026 of what model we should move forward with. So we're piloting many different Algebra 1 models. We're not assuming we're going to end up with all of them, but we want to make sure that we can test different models to figure out which ones are going to most equitably support students.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, I think we have so many questions in the chat. I know we're not going to get to all of them, but I do want to just kind of get to some of them at least. And anything, we always take questions away and send them over after our meeting and get our district partners to get answers to us after the fact. So let me see.
So Jerry, just as we transition, and then we can let people raise their hand and we can call on them. And I know we have some families who are newer to SF Parents, and we're so excited to see you here from Guadalupe Elementary School, who took our Read to Lead workshop over the last few weeks. And so we definitely want to get your questions. And so as we're transitioning, just one more that we had was specifically around the Japan math pilot at some high priority schools. And we know that with the loss of these interventionists and coaches from schools for programs like that, those programs and the how they're serving our students at those schools, and those are high priority schools, is really at risk. And so I think that's a really good example. It's a awful situation but a good example of how our budget cuts are putting our student outcomes at risk. And so if there's any thoughts that you have on like how you all can push from your end, how we all can push from our end, so that the superintendent's plan reflects a preservation of important programs like that. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but we're worried when we see high quality programs that are actually moving the needle for kids, in really significant ways. If you look at that data, even if we can't afford extrapolating it to all schools right now, like how do we preserve that? And then let's open to folks in the room.
I will speak about that one piece. Literally today, after I finish this, we are having an additional meeting at the executive cabinet level with the superintendent to discuss these specific nuances of supports that we have been receiving emails about and calls. And we want to make sure that whichever the decision is about what we can prioritize out of all these requests, which all make sense. It's not like there is one better than the other. However, given the situation in which we are, we have to make sure that whatever we decide that we will continue in certain ways will have not just the support, but also a support that is fiscally responsible. So lesson study and the piloting of lesson study is one of those that is going to be discussed today. And hopefully we will be able to walk out of that room with a defined answer for the schools that are implementing that right now. So yes, we are looking into that as we speak. I don't have the final answer though.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for looking into it, and we will keep pressing you on it. Okay, so Jerry, does anyone want to raise their hand? I know we have the Guadalupe families here. If there's a question there.
Roberta, are you in a place to unmute? I saw your question in the room. Did you get an answer, or do you want to ask another question, or that question about the specific supports that are needed at high need schools like Guadalupe?
Yeah, definitely. One of my questions would be, finally we got an answer, and we got permission to have the springboard this summer and using the school funds. One of my questions is moving forward with the newcomers coming into a school and the high need of English learners. Are we gonna be able to keep the reading programs, not just for this summer, but in coming years? And what we need to do in order to gain the school district support and the assistant superintendent support to be able to make it happen.
Thank you. A little bit of the same answer than before. And this is the new piece that I will add. The superintendent is looking at all the different investments that we have, and so are we. And again, Springboard has shown success, and that's why it was offered only in the 2 schools in different geographical sections of the city that we could afford with the specific funding that we still had for summer school. Unfortunately, that was all that we could do. And so thank you, Señor Roberto, and thank you to the Guadalupe community, because you reach out to other people that could support that program. In general, we are not close to partnering with any agency and any organization that can support these. What is clear right now from the district perspective is that the funding that we used to have for many of these external programs, we don't have it anymore for now. And I want to emphasize that for now. So as we are facing this crisis, we want to make sure that we continue partnering with external partners so that we can provide those additional support to schools without relinquishing our responsibility. And the main responsibility lies right now into implementing the core curriculum across the board, into getting every classroom with a qualified teacher, into providing the professional development that these teachers need, and as much as possible, providing these additional resources that schools have been counting on for so long, and right now we are facing this precarious situation. So the commitment is there. We need to look at the funding and the priorities.
Before we go to Cindy's question, can you just clarify, Dr. Aguilera-Fort, do you know how many schools don't have qualified teachers in the classrooms, or how many classrooms? You're on mute, but you look very animated about this question.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just read the question in the chat, and I'm going to ask our partners in HR, and I'll get back to you with that. What is the percentage of vacancies that we have? I transferred that into my journal so I can take it to executive cabinet, because I don't really have the number.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Roberto, for your question. And it sounds like things are starting to move in the right direction, which is good. And Cindy.
So thank you both for sharing. And I think one of my main concerns is that there'll be a lot of combined grade classrooms in the coming year. So what kind of supports is going to happen? Because some of our teachers are going to have to learn 2 grades of new curriculum for math. Some of them might have to do it in a language. I think it's a huge amount that we're asking of our teachers. So the more that you all can do to support them would be helpful.
Ms. Krugman, I know you and Mr. De Loza have been developing the plan to support these.
Yeah, so I can speak to it, and then Miguel, please let me know if I forget anything. But I think one of the things that's important to know is the district is planning for a series of combination classrooms in every combination. So K1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. And across different schools, those combinations based on the student enrollment are different, right? So not every classroom that has a combination is 50-50 students of 2 grades. And so one of the ways in which we are working to support teachers as they prepare for that is to try to provide combination classroom guidance that is specific to the grade level and the subject area. And the difficulty of that is the guidance is a little bit different depending on the grade level and the subject area and the balance of students in the room. So there are some, I would say, national models for this that are, geared towards multi-age classrooms. Some use a flipped model where we have students using a blended, let's say, like if it's a 2-3 split. Students might use a blended learning classroom while the second graders might use a blended learning tool while the teacher does a 3rd grade lesson and then flips, and the 3rd graders do the blended learning and this teacher works with the 2nd graders. There are other ones where, we might have a whole group lesson that is geared towards a mix of the second and third grade standards, and then a series of stations that students would rotate between that are grade specific activities. So there is a lot of nuance depending on the model for how that would look. There are some differences in that design for K2 versus 3-5. We see a lot of schools at the 3-5 level that do something called cohorting their classrooms. So they might, if they have, a series of 4-5 combinations, they might designate some teachers of, let's say, like language and literacy and history, social studies, and another teacher of math and science. And so then, the math and science teacher does math and science for 4th and 5th grade lessons, and they mix the kids around. So there's a couple of different school and grade models that we are providing guidance on, which will include the instructional design of the classroom. So how to use your time, how to make small groups. It also includes scope and sequence. So, for example, you can, in language and literacy, address, reading standard 1, but have kids reading text of different complexities depending on their grade level. So I'll pause there in case, Miguel, I don't know if there's anything I forgot.
Yes, we're also checking, with the teachers that already have combo classes and gather all that information from them. And especially they have language programs at their side, and because the subjects could be in different languages as well. So getting all that information and just like Devin said, create the guidance from there.
Lizzie, I see you. Go ahead and unmute and ask a question, please.
Right, thank you so much. I just wanted to chime in as a parent who has had a child in a combo class. We actually had a very successful 1-2 combo last year. And the reason that it was successful was because there were 2 1-2 classes at our school. So there were actually 2 teachers who were working with that group of kids, and they were able to group them in according to their skills, basically. So when it was math time, there would be math groups, and one teacher would work with one set of groups and the other teacher would work with the other. So that widespread was really accounted for. And in the current proposal, we're looking at a 4-5 combo class with just one teacher. And that's just a really different situation. And so I would just urge you, when you're thinking about those classes, it makes an enormous difference whether there are 2 or 3 combo classes doing the same spread, or if there's just one teacher who's responsible for that whole range. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Okay, we have a couple minutes left, and I don't see any more hands, so I have one question, a little bit selfishly, because it's a little bit more, it's about high school and I have a 9th grader. So can you tell us about math and literacy along with college and career readiness goals? Has your office worked with the budget office to ensure that those cuts aren't going to impact the, the goals that we have, like the A to G goals that we have, AP classes, yeah, how have you guys been working with the district to make sure that that can be preserved, or will it be preserved? How does it look different? Any insight there?
In terms of the A through G offerings, that's our responsibility. So we understand that the financial situation has put a different type of barriers. However, the district responsibility is to offer A through G courses so our kids are ready to choose their path, college and career. So that one is a given. In this current allocation, we had different iterations of it. And one of those is connected to this particular piece, as principals gave us the feedback, and the assistant superintendent for high schools as well. And they showed that we wouldn't be able to offer certain courses if we didn't increase the allocation for those sites. So that one has been taken into consideration. Schools are working under that idea that they will be offering those courses, and the budget has been given for that particular piece. Another area, which is in the CCR component, now we are looking into how to combine the 2 teams so that the work is not just done by departments, but done as an entire unit of support for high school, so we can maximize the teams that we have. And that has started this year. And the goal is for next year to be even more seamless. So people can see the high school from the curriculum and instruction to the support and supervision as one entire team. So that's what I can respond right now. So we are working with the budget office for the high school allocation.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, it's a 1 minute over. And I know you're running from meeting to meeting to meeting. So we'll let you go. And we just appreciate you both so much. Actually, all three of you, Miguel too, and Devin and Dr. Aguilera-Fort for being here today. Thank you so much to all of our families who showed up today to advocate for your kids. Again, if you are interested in this work and you're passionate about making sure that your child and every child in SFUSD is meeting their outcomes and milestones, reach out to Jerry at sfparents.org and we can figure out where you can get plugged in. If you have other questions, you can email hello@sfparents.com. We want to see you again. We'd love to see you again always. We'll be in touch with other meetings virtually, but we also have a really big event coming up in April. We're having a big celebration at Balboa Park on Sunday, April 27th, to celebrate what we've accomplished for Kids Can't Wait campaign. We're going to have a lot of fun, like great activities for everybody, for little kids and big kids alike. And we hope to see you there. So hopefully we can get that link to you to register in the chat room. And other than that, thank you again for your time and for showing up for our kids. Have a great day.
Thank
And
you.
as
Thank you so
SFUSD
much.
departs, thank you, SFUSD. I'm just going to put an extra plug for what Jerry just plugged, which is join us and please email her and see how you can get involved in this campaign because it's not over yet, as you're hearing, as you're seeing. And SFUSD is doing amazing things with the limited resources that they have right now. It's incredible that we're taking on these new curricula and programs and despite the cuts, but we need you to keep helping us help them, right? And so please join us in this work. It's so powerful and it's like just we can accomplish these things because we're working together with the district in a collaborative way. We all want kids to succeed and they all can, but it takes all of us. So please, email Jerry, attend the event, and thank you for joining today.